I wanted to talk about fostering, parenting in this current era. I don't know how our parents did it. I think our parents just checked out and was like, let's not talk about this. So we had a generation of let's not talk about this. But we're going to give you the talk with, how to drive, put your hands to the two and all this. But we're not really going to talk about race. We're going to just forge forward. We're going to send you to good schools. You're going to put your head down. You're going to be excellent. And then they're going to accept you. That didn't happen. So not only now do we have an issue with how we navigate race with our children, but we also have on a force to not even want us to talk about it in schools. So today, many of you know I teach at Hunter College. This has nothing to do with journalism, but it has everything to do with journalism. I talked about Colin in Black and White, and I talked about that episode where he talks about Romare Bearden. So I pulled up Romare Bearden's picture, shared my screen, and I said, this is a black man. And everybody looked confused. This class has two African-American women in it, but they weren't present today. So I have, students from Ireland. I have a student from Costa Rica. I have a student from, I can't even, Kazakhstan. I have Hispanics. I have, nobody thought that Romare Bearden was a black man. And I gave his bio. Oh, okay. So because he was in Harlem, maybe he assumed the culture. This is how they're trying to reconcile what their eyeballs are clearly not. So I said, race is a made-up construct. In America, Romare Bearden is black. And here's why. And I gave them the history of the 132nd rule and, the status of the child following the status of the mother. So I said, we're going to learn about race in this class as long as I'm teaching it. But I want you as journalists to challenge and question everything, even what your eyes see, and find out, like, why is Romare Bearden black? Like, why? And let's come to some conclusions. So I just want to welcome in as well, El Joyce here. And April's been here many, many times. She, of course, has a podcast where she talks about it. You can follow her at June and April. June Raised in April is the podcast. Born in June, Raised in April. Let me welcome April Dinwoodie.
Hello.
Hi.
So good to be back. It's nice to see you. Hear you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay. I'm gonna start with Joy because she got a house full of children, and I love the laughter and the noise of children. It makes my heart warm. Listen. When I remember when you decided to take in London. I remember your journey with Miss London. That's how far back. And I know you've been on the show to talk about, trying to have a child of your own. What's been why do you foster children?
Well, we started out, my husband and I, doing it in, like you mentioned, it was a family member, right? It's just like, I'm not going to let the system take a family member. Like, we're perfectly healthy and able to do so. We're going to take the person. And, part of the process, if you become foster for a family member, is that you have the opportunity to keep your license open. You hear them in the background, is to keep because you have to get licensed to foster, even if you're a family member. And we decided to keep our license open to allow the space for more children to come in our home because we were able to do so. Now, I happen to come from a family and a background who, there were foster parents in my family. Majority of them did so after they retired, and they were older Black women. And so it never dawned on me about being a foster parent like at a younger age. It was like, oh, that's something I can do in retirement. And then going through the process and being in the agency, one, and seeing so many Black and brown kids in the foster care system, and two, only seeing seniors in that role, was like, well, there should be more younger parents, younger foster parents, in our, late 20s or 30s or 40s, that can provide homes and some stability, because the children that end up being in foster care are there for a variety of reasons, some of them legitimate, some of them not, and so there are a number of reasons why people enter this, and why not be a place of safety, of love. And as you mentioned, being able to, hear the sounds of kids playing, it's kind of comforting to be like, I can do my work here and talk to Karen Hunter while the kids are over there fighting because one of them is breaking crayons. But, and, that's so great.
Don't let them shoving up the nose, because that's an urgent care visit that you, I'm sure, don't have time. Look, and then they want to be on the camera. One of them has to be a Leo. One of them has to be a Leo. 866-801-8255. Eljoy Williams is here. April Dinwoodie, you were adopted. You were a child adopted. And I wanted to have this conversation with you since I finished watching Colin in Black and White on Netflix, because I'm like, I think April was raised in an all-white environment, all-white town. Yes. How do you, with different hair and different, skin tone and, navigating that when you watched it? I'm assuming you definitely
Oof, did I had to take it in doses though.
It was triggering.
Activating, absolutely. It is very in line with the experiences I had. I was the cheerleader. I didn't go on to get paid professionally to do that, but I was the cheerleader versus the football player. But it's so similar to the experiences that I had, and it was activating. It did bring back a lot of realities, but based on the podcast and the other conversations we've had, I'm in deep relationship to that complexity on the regular versus my first probably 17 years of my life. I was in absolute separation from that, the realities of that. I had to go and be in it. So when I'm in it on the regular, it's less activating than it would be to see that, but it's activating nonetheless. But it's deep, and it speaks to so much of what people don't know and recognize that we shoulder as Black and brown persons raised in all white, majority white environments. It's so often physically, emotionally, and psychologically unsafe.
There's some bullying going on in Utah. I'm gonna talk about that story later. A 10-year-old actually committed suicide.
Oh, that's right.
Black girl, after being harangued and harassed in Utah, which has I think 1% Black population. Beyond you being adopted into a white family, there are people who move into neighborhoods because they want to provide better schools and better this and better that and better for their children. But really, they're putting them into trauma, because as I'm watching Colin's parents, who I know they loved him, Colin, I know that, but to Eljoy's point, the system is inundated and overrun with us, but we're not necessarily, is grandma and them taking in the children. We're not actually, I think, stepping up as much as we should to make sure our children have community and have homes. So, as I'm watching, some well-meaning, and I think about Amy Coney Barrett, I think about Mitt Romney, I think about John McCain, all who have adopted brown children and Black children, and they almost have them, Sandy Bullock, Angelina Jolie, Charlize Theron, and these are celebrities and people who are wealthy, but it's almost like like a earring or
accessory
jewelry. Yeah, exactly.
So it speaks to so many things. One, it's there is an overrepresentation of Black children in the foster care system, full stop. 22% of the 122 children right now in foster care that are what we call, listen to the language, freed for adoption. Okay. Institutionalized racist language in all of the systems, emancipated from foster care. So let's just say that these systems in and of themselves are riddled with evidence of there being a disconnect to the realities. And then you have well-meaning, amazing parents like mine, who two things can be true at the same time, many things can be true at the same time. My parents loved me. They also adopted me and kept doing white things because that's what they knew. They had no idea at all on how to make the space for my body, my hair, my spirit, my heart, but they loved me. And it is a contradiction and one thing that today, working to unravel and undo that is part of my, part of the focus of what I do, both in systems and in specifically in families, to say you can do this, but your mind's got to be open and you have to act, and it has to be urgent. 866-801-8255. If there's anyone out there fostering, please, I know you're trying to get in before the kids start
acting up again, or not acting up, acting like children.
No,
Eljoy
they're
Williams is
children.
here. Exactly. April Dinwoodie is here. Go ahead, Eljoy. I'm sorry.
One of the aspects, just I had never thought about that, April, just in terms of the language that we use in terms of foster care that are so similar to previous, to slavery, right? Emancipated, freed, sort of
Put up for
that
adoption.
put up for adoption. Yeah, I never that never clicked to me just now until you said it. But the other thing that's really important is that for a lot of that overrepresentation of people of young people of color in foster care is also because of poverty. Right. And, that's something that my husband and I are very mindful of as we are fostering, children. A lot of the times their children are taken because, oh, well, they can't provide food for them, or they're homeless, or that they was like, and then they give us as the foster parents money and resources to actually care for the child. Right. So it's like, so why not just, if the issue is, because some of the things they do, Karen, is even when they do site visits at our home, they want to open the refrigerator and the cabinets. Do you have enough food? Well, if I am a young mom under the age of, 22, I'm working a minimum wage job. Am I going to be like, my cabinets and refrigerator always going to be stocked like I go to Costco every other week, or are we going to have exactly what we need for the next couple of days, because that's how I can survive? And yes, my children eat. I may not have, cabinets full of things, but they eat, right? And so instead of giving me as the foster parent additional resources, be it WIC, be it food stamps, be it all of those things, you've now created trauma by taking the kid out of their home, from their parents, from their family. Why not just give the extra resources to the birth parent?
Wow.
Because if you notice, this is all the thing they need.
Well, Eljoy Williams, April, I know you want to jump in because I want to parrot something that you hear. Well, my taxpayer, you shouldn't have had the child if you couldn't take care of them. And why should my taxpayer dollar go to supplement you and your poor choices and poor planning? And I hear what you're saying, but you are providing, you're doing something extra, Eljoy, in taking a child in. I don't think my taxpayer dollars should go. This is not Karen talking, but I've heard this. Yeah. April.
Well, when it really gets sharp and really touches you in a way is when a young person in one of my foster care mentoring programs says to you, hey, April, my foster parent gets money for me, right? My mom's just poor. Why can't you give my mom the money? She can parent me. When a young person tells you that and knows it and has internalized it, then it hits you in a different way, because they know, young people know, these young people who are saying, now, to also be clear, there are some parents that cannot, with all the resources, properly, safely, in earnest, parent their children. That is a true story. More often than not, there are probably ways to support those individuals, many of them, to be able to parent with support. All that we give to post-adoption services, we give to stipends, tax refunds, right? All of that, if you put all of that into the matrix, you would have far more children that can stay in their families of origin, right? With the support. But we would just much rather amputate children from one family system and graft them onto another. We would much rather do that because we tend to fancy this idea of a family that has more means or looks a different way is going to be a better parent. It is so deeply sinister, and it's really hard to deconstruct because it's been hardwired into how we do child welfare. Now, we're trying to change those things, but it is deeply hardwired into how we do child welfare in this country.
Today's Veterans Day as well. We'll talk about that. But I wanted to spend some time in this space because to April's point, emancipation, putting up for adoption, freeing people, I've been reading now because of Dr. Greg Carr, a lot about, how they did this with Native Americans, take them from their homes and re-educate them. Strip them of their language, their culture, their hair, everything to make them fit into an American way of life. As you're talking, do they go into, because the 5 poorest counties in this country are in Kentucky, and they're 95 to 99% white. The poorest places in this country are white. Do they go into these homes and snatch these children out? Do they go into these homes and look into their cabinets and pull them into the foster care system? I'm just asking because it feels like historically this lines up with the chain gang, with prison, with all, and we need to start to think differently. And not just, well, of course the child's going to have a better chance living with L. Joy Williams and her teacher husband and in a beautiful home with the da-da-da-da than with her mother when she just needs the resources, can you speak to that? Either one of you.
Exactly.
L. Joy.
No, I will. That's something I'm always mindful of myself. Like even as we are fostering is the difference between you can easily get in the mindset of, I can provide a better life for this child, right? Even as you are fostering or looking at, adoption or whatever, being able to take them from another, it doesn't have to be just because you can provide what you perceive as better, meaning they'll, have extracurricular activities and, I can afford doing these extra things in my network of resources, doesn't mean that they don't need to be with their parent. Like their parent can parent them as well. They may not have the resources, the network and all that stuff to engage your child in a way that you can, but that doesn't mean you deserve their child more than, than they do. And, to April's point in terms about the structures, and I'm thinking about this, Karen, in a lot through, Brooklyn NAACP is about to enter our centennial year. And I'm thinking about, what are some of the structural things that have been long-term structural problems in our communities, and like what is the boundary? What is the barrier, for us addressing this issue? And, I think it's something about employment or housing, right? For children who are foster care, their birth parents, when we had a birth parent who, didn't have stability in housing, in order for her to get housing priority and get housing, because she had to, the kids had to leave me and we had to drive her to a shelter. And she had to go into the shelter with her kids to then prove that she was homeless, to then be able to provide housing in order for, right? Like this backwards thing. And again, it's like all of these systems are talking past each other, sort of not in coordination with each other. It's like this parent just needed stability in housing. She didn't need her children taken away. She didn't need, right? She was capable to got a job during COVID. Right, like got a job, but couldn't keep the job because she would not have reliable childcare, right? So it's like, okay, so why not, instead of the triage model which is I'm thinking about now, just as Brooklyn NAACP, like we're entering our centennial year, I'm thinking about centennial fellowships and centennial programs rather, we'll have the gala, but I want to be like, how can we make concrete change in our communities? Well, same thing with, is like the triage model. I don't need to take her kids. I need to help her with childcare and help her with housing. And then and then she's good. We'll check back in 6 months, make sure, 3 months or whatever, make sure she's good. We can now move on to something else where a child is being abused or like we can move on to other things, but they treat everything the same.
So with that in mind, Karen, I want to answer your question about before. You talked about like, does this happen to white families? The numbers for National Adoption Month just came out. There are 122 children waiting to be adopted in foster care. Of that 122, 22% are Black African American, 22 are Hispanic, and 44% are white. But if you look at population statistics, that is an overrepresentation of Black and brown people and an underrepresentation of white people. So poor white kids, however you want to say it, do get removed from their families, but at a much lower rate. So we know why that is, right? So that's one thing. The other thing to think about, and I want to say this because there are some systemic changes that are looking to address this. From the Children's Bureau, there's a grant granted to Spalding for Children. It's called the Minority Professional Leadership Development Project, and it's a multiple year grant. I don't know how many years it is, but it's addressing the problem of leadership in child welfare, to say we need more leaders that look like the kids we're serving, and they're putting leaders currently in place today into fellowships to have them lead, because these organizations, if they're white led, continue to perpetuate some of these systemic issues. So there are some things that are hopeful and bright lights for me that are being funded by the government that say this is a problem. One of the levers to pull to fix it is leadership that looks like the population that is overrepresented in the child welfare system. So there are some things that are happening, but it takes so much more at a higher level of engagement to truly address these things. You're talking about poverty, you're talking about housing instability, tax credits for children, but it's the mindset too has to shift, that this family is just better because of this rate of economics, color of their skin. We have to shift that, and that is a heavy weight.
Well, we're committed. And if you can drop in the chat the Spalding grant so we can tweet it out, because I know there's someone listening that this would be a perfect space for them to be in leadership, and we need more of us, which is why I don't know how you do it, Aljoy. You're the Brooklyn, you do the Sunday civics, you got, the children, you got Miles, you're like, every time you're doing your robotics, your drone, you're over here doing crafts, arts and crafts, making wreaths for Christmas. How do you do all of the things?
Well, I come from, I explained this a lot. I was like, there should be like a special on us, Gen Xers, right? Like I came from a family that they invested in us being well-rounded individuals and being able to explore all aspects of your interests. Like, yes, you have something that you are interested in, passionate about, and things like that, but, if math over here tickles your fancy, go do it. Like, it's fun, it's fine. And I also was taught by teachers. I remember this from Miss Triplett, a teacher who told me, if you know a little bit about a lot of things and you know how to ask questions, you'll be able to get along in any room with anybody in any country, in any ethnicity, any race, anything. Because even if you're in a room and you don't know about the thing, knowing how to ask the right questions will make you seem interesting, will make people want to talk to you and engage with you.
You're not answering my question, Aljoy. How are you juggling all of these things? How?
I just am. I don't know. I don't know how to tell you.
All right.
Some things fall by the wayside sometimes, and then sometimes I'm up until like 2 a.m. and Miles yells at me. So.
But in the midst of all of this, you decided to take in more children.
Yes. Because we can do more. We can do more. All of this requires community. And as you mentioned, there are more people that need to be shown that, you don't need a lot, to be in place in order to provide a stable, loving environment, for children. And you need more young professionals, you need more younger folks, you need younger couples, Black couples, Black individuals to be able to provide that space. Around the corner from us, and our new home is a friend of mine, him and his husband, they foster as well. And they have, 2 little girls, right? And they are young as well. And just creating this network of that we can provide support for community and not only provide support for the children, but we find ourselves, because we have been fostering kids of younger adults. So all of the parents that we have fostered have been under the age of 25, right? They need support and stuff as well, helping them navigate, right? Some of them was just like, oh, I don't know how to get a copy of a birth certificate. I don't have, how do I get access to this? Some of that, and we have the benefit of some of that knowledge, those of us who went to college and travel the world and be able to that. Why can't we provide that same resource and mentorship to our community? You can't just talk about it and tweet about it and say people ought to do, like, what you doing?